So I think you should be menu driven on doing options. In other words, the other thing I think, we should be able to do is say, okay, what are the expectations that I can do in a spread? And so there's a lot of ways to kind of impose order on this, but what I think we should be able to do as a test taker is identify a spread. Once we've identified the spread, by the way, if that wasn't a test question, I just told you it is. But even if that wasn't a test question, it is. If you can't do that, then you don't know what to do next. So, I mean, you're just going to be staring at the screen going, I don't know, B, and that's not a good strategy. Once we've identified it, we want to determine whether it is credit or debit. Credit is more money in than out. Debit is more money out than in. And again, that's really important because we should know as test takers that when we sell an option position, we sell a call, we sell a put, we sell a straddle, we sell a spread. When we're short a call, short a put, short a straddle, short a spread, we should know that the best case is we agree to be a potential victim, nobody victimizes us, and we keep the money. And what follows from knowing whether it's a credit or debit is whether the next testable item is, do we want the spread to expire or exercise? And do we want, this is the hardest part to get, and we don't need to get it, but do we want the difference in the premiums? Because that's what spread means, difference. Spread means difference. What's the spread on the game tonight? What I'm betting on is the difference in the scores. Do we want the narrow or wide? The fifth thing we need to be able to do is max gain and max loss. And then we got to be able to do break even. And if you do all these things, you got my guarantee that whatever they want to know, you've got the answer. And the last thing we got to be able to do is bullish or bearish. So we're going to do all these things. I call it don't hate the 8. Don't hate the 8. Okay, so let me get an option position up here. And boom, we'll leg into a spread. We will leg into a spread. Again, this is part of testing you on a spread. So I'm going to go buy one Apple August 170 call at 13. Now, again, you can do anything you like. What I suggest we do is I like underneath the contract, say, okay, what am I looking at here? And what I'm looking at, this was your point earlier about understanding options, and I'm looking at a choice to buy the stock at the strike price. I think options are all about, floors and ceilings. And what I mean by that is there's a floor here at 170. If Apple's 170 or lower, this contract is going to expire at expiration, and I'm going to be out 13 points. Some people are visual people, so boom, I'll just make a visual here. Here's, we'll put that in black. That's our floor. And here's the price of Apple. Well, let's get a little arrow up here. Okay, so before I turn this into a spread, what is my break even in this transaction? This is a basic option transaction. What is my break even? Well, listen, if you can't tell me the break even, you shouldn't even be looking at spreads and straddles. Right? If you can't do basic options, the break even here is 183, strike price plus premium. So I'm going to need 13 points of upward volatility to break even. I'm bullish. My max loss is 13. So don't tell anybody, but maybe I don't have $1,300 and nobody's lending me money to buy options. So what I might want to do, I'll tell you when it gets testable. It's not testable yet. What I might want to do to lower my out-of-pocket cost is I might want to sell one Apple August 195 call at 6. Boom. What I'm basically saying here is I only want to play between 170 and 195, and then I don't want to play no more. Options are all about floors and ceilings. Floors and ceilings. And so here I have a ceiling at 195. A spread, all the action takes place between the strikes. Okay, test question number 1. Are we clear that that is a spread? The spread is, again, the difference, right? That's a spread. That's test question number 1. You were looking at a spread. This is called a vertical or price spread because the only thing that's different here is the strikes. All right, so our second test question, is this a debit or a credit spread? Is this a debit or a credit spread? Well, listen, I'm not going to spend an hour with you if you're just going to watch me do tricks on the dry erase board. If you're not going to participate, yeah, this is a debit spread. And we got more money out than in. So whether you want to do that with a T, right? I like to use dollars out. Whether you want to use debit, whether you want to use a minus sign, whatever floats your boat. Yeah, a little too bad. Boom. And, when we got spreads, I like to really be disciplined in what I'm doing because there's, a lot of stuff going on. So there's our 175 call. And for that 175 call, we are out 13. And again, you can use pluses or minuses, whatever floats your boat. And so we'll put that here. Boom. And all right, so what about that 6? Is that 6 money out or money in? Yeah, that's money in. And so that's how we're determining whether this is a debit or credit. And again, not testable, not testable. But I have lowered my out-of-pocket cost from 13 to 7. That is the net. And it's much easier for Apple to go up 7 than it is for Apple to go up 13. So in a debit spread, what I've done is lower my out-of-pocket cost, not testable. And by lowering my out-of-pocket cost, I've done a couple things. I've lowered my amount of risk, and I've drawn the break even more to me. This is a debit spread of 7. So we'll put that there. We'll call that our net debit. Okay, so we've determined this is a debit spread. Boom. And so do we want the contracts to expire? Do we want Apple to be 170 or lower and have these contracts expire? No, because we'd be a loser. We certainly don't want that. By the way, we're less of a loser than we otherwise would be, because if the contracts expire, we'd be out 7 points. Now, it's better than losing 13, but that's not what we want. Right? Whoop. right? Let's see, if the contracts get exercised, we would be buying Apple at 170 and being called away at 195. Woo! Would we be happy or sad if that happened? That would be happy, right? Wouldn't we be happy? We'd make what, 25 points less 7? That's a good thing. So exercise. We definitely want the contracts to exercise. Now, if when we did the spread, when we did the spread, I said, Joanna, the spread is 7. The difference between these two numbers is 7. So we can buy the Apple 170 call at 13. We can sell the 195 calls at 6, lower our out-of-pocket cost from 13 to 7. So we have a net debit of 7. Hardest part to get. I say right now, Joanna, the premiums have moved, and now the difference in the premiums is 9. Was 7, now it's 9. I could close this out for 9, and you would make 2. If the premiums widen, the difference gets bigger, we're going to be happy campers. She says, Dean, what's the difference in the premiums? I said, well, not going so well for us. The difference now is 4. It was 7, now it's 4. We lose 3 if we close it out today. She says, Dean, what's the difference in the premiums? I go, 12. Great. We bought it for 7. We can sell it for 12. We make 5. That's the hardest part to get, this idea of widen and narrow. You don't need to get it because once you get debit, you can go debit, exercise, widen. You'll be right every time. Every time. Now, the whole point of a spread, is I'm saying that I want to play between 170 and 195, and then I don't want to play no more. That is the whole point of a spread. All the action takes place between the floor and the ceiling. So there is 25 points to be made or lost here. There is 25 points to be made or lost, and we spent 7. So that means if there's 25 points to be made or lost, and we spent 7, that means that the most we can make is 18. Now, the gain and the loss always equals the difference in the strikes. Always, always, always. So you can either memorize, yuck. You can either memorize that the maximum gain in a debit spread is the difference in the strikes less the debit. I think that's a mental mess. I think it's easier to know whatever the gain and the loss is, it has to equal the difference in the strikes. Right? So remember this from grade school? 7 plus something equals 25. So our max gain here is 18. Now, once you get the menu done, then you can think about it. Don't think about it till you get everything done, right? Which is why I told you don't hate the 8. And so our max gain here is at 18 points. Test-taking trick, the gain and the loss always equals the difference in the strikes. Always, always, always. And so it can't be any two numbers that don't add up to the difference in the strikes. All right, so we got our gain, we got our loss. The break even has to be somewhere between these two numbers. The break even has to be somewhere between 170 and 195. You can eliminate any choice that isn't between 170 and 195. Do you remember the memory aid device for break evens and spreads? If you've been following me, I have a memory aid device. Anybody remember the memory aid device for break evens?
Call, add lower.
Yeah, call, add to the lower. So the way we're going to get the break even here is we're going to take the lower strike. We're going to add the net premium, which in this case is 7, which is 177. By the way, much better than without the spread. Remember, without the spread, the break even was 183. That's the whole point of the spread, by the way. I lowered my break even from 183 down to 177. And it's a lot easier for Apple to go up 7 than it is for Apple to go up, 13, right? Boom, boom, let's get rid of that. Our last thing we got to be able to do. Now, by the way, think about when you get done, but the last thing we got to be able to do is determine whether the spread is bullish or bearish. So how do we determine whether the spread is bullish or bearish? How do we determine whether the spread? Because what we need to know is where do we want this to be? By the way, after you get the break even, you can think about it. If I buy the stock at 170, which I have a choice to do, and I sell the stock at 177, I'm just proving that indeed that's the break even. That makes the columns balance. So, another way you could do break even is you could say, okay, what is the number that if I plug it in there would make the columns balance? Because that's what break even is. Break even is same dollars out as dollars in. So I'm just illustrating that indeed that's the break even. All righty. So is it bullish or bearish? How do we determine bullish or bearish?
You have a trick
Is
for
it
that.
Yeah. Larger
is it
premium.
the one with the higher premium?
Yeah, that's right. It's the one with the higher premium. By the way, even if it was missing premiums, you should know that lower strike call contracts always have greater premiums. Lower strike call contracts always have greater premiums. Choice to buy Apple at a lower price is more desirable. You're going to pay more for that. So we did all 8 things you're required to do on the spread. We said, don't hate the 8. There's 8 test questions about spreads. We said the first thing is, can you identify a spread? A spread is when you're long and short the same type of contract. So can you identify a spread? Then the next thing you got to be able to do, so there's our spread. We did a spread. Boom. We said the next thing we got to be able to do on the test is determine debit or credit. We determined debit. We netted the premiums. We determined that if it's a net debit, we want to exercise and we want the difference in the premiums to widen. We determined that if we pay money, worst case is we lose it. We said the gain and loss always equals the difference in the strikes. We said you can either memorize the maximum gain in a debit spread is the difference in the strikes, 25, less the net debit, 7 for 18, or just 7 plus something equals 25, however you get there. We determined the break even is 177. The break even is somewhere between those two numbers. And we determined that this is a bullish spread. All right, so those are all the things. So if it's 177 or higher, by the way, you don't participate past the strike. So that's the disadvantage here, right? You don't participate. If Apple goes to 200, 210, 220, you got to deliver the stock at 195. All the action takes place between those strikes. And I illustrated to you the break even here. Boom, boom, boom. All right, so let's clear that.